A billionaire found two twin sisters asleep in the stable with his horses. A few days later, he came home early and was shocked by what they had done. The storm battered the fields of the Ashford estate with an unusual ferocity for this time of year. Jonathan watched from the window of his library, the lightning reflecting off his collection of old photographs that adorned the walls. His eyes, tired from decades of stories, fixed on the main stable where a flickering and unusual light caught his attention. Michael should have turned off all the lights, he murmured to himself, adjusting the heavy coat on his shoulders. At 65, Jonathan Ashford still retained the elegance inherited from generations of horse breeders. His grey hair and deep blue eyes carried the nobility of his lineage, but also the weight of secrets he preferred to keep in the shadows. The library clock read 11:47 p.m. when he decided to investigate. Martha Jenkins, the housekeeper who had served the family for 3 decades, appeared silently at the door. "Mr. Ashford, you shouldn't go out in this weather," she said with a voice imbued with sincere concern, mixed with that particular authority that only years of loyal service could justify. "There's something wrong in the stable, Martha. The horses are restless." Indeed, even through the roar of the storm, the nervous whinnies of the animals could be heard. Jonathan knew each of his horses as if they were members of his own family, perhaps even better than his own son Edward, who had chosen city life years ago. Armed with a lantern and protected by a raincoat, Jonathan crossed the drenched gardens. The mud stained his Italian leather boots, but he paid little attention to it. His thoughts were focused on the stable, where Midnight Prince, his prize stallion, was neighing with more intensity. As he opened the heavy wooden door, the familiar smell of hay and leather was replaced by something else, a sweet scent, foreign to this environment. The light he had seen from the library came from a small makeshift lamp, half hidden behind bales of hay. "Who's there?" his deep voice echoed in the stable. The silence that followed was interrupted only by the sound of rain and the nervous movements of the horses. Jonathan advanced, his firm steps crushing the straw that covered the floor. It was then that his eyes caught a subtle movement behind Midnight Prince's stall. Raising his lantern, the light revealed a scene that made his heart skip a beat. 2 young women, almost identical, huddled together, their clothes soaked and dirty, their faces marked by a mixture of fear and exhaustion. They couldn't have been more than 23 years old. "Please," one of them murmured, the one who was shielding her sister with her own body, "don't call the police." Jonathan felt something strange in his chest. It was not just compassion, but an inexplicable recognition. There was something in these faces, particularly in their grey-green eyes, that awakened long-buried memories. "Are you hurt?" he asked, lowering the lantern so as not to frighten them further. The second young woman, who seemed slightly more fragile, lifted her face. A superficial cut marked her temple. "It's nothing serious, sir. We just needed shelter from the storm." Midnight Prince, usually wary of strangers, approached the partition of his stall, stretching his neck towards the young women. To Jonathan's surprise, the horse allowed the first young woman to touch his muzzle, a gesture the animal rarely tolerated, even with experienced caretakers. "You know horses," he stated more than asked. "Our mother." The first young woman hesitated, exchanging a significant look with her sister. "She taught us everything about them." At that moment, Martha appeared at the stable door, her austere silhouette framed by a flash of lightning. Her eyes widened upon seeing the scene. "Mr. Ashford, should I call the authorities?" The young women curled up further, but Jonathan had already made his decision. Something about this night, about this encounter, seemed predestined. "No, Martha. Prepare the guest room in the east wing, and ask Emily to bring them dry clothes and a hot meal." Turning to the young women, he softened his voice. "Unless you prefer to spend the night with the horses." The stronger of the 2 sisters, Jonathan noted she had a small scar near her chin, stood up first, helping her twin. "My name is Victoria," she said, "and this is my sister, Emily Winters, Victoria and Emily Winters." The name struck Jonathan like another bolt of lightning. Winters, a name that hadn't been spoken in decades at the Ashford estate. His mind flew to the locked drawer in his desk, where an old photograph preserved the face of a person also named Winters. Martha, who knew every family secret, visibly paled upon hearing the surname. Her hands gripped her apron tightly, a gesture that did not escape Victoria. "Come," said Jonathan, his voice masking the storm of thoughts now assailing him. "We will talk more tomorrow." As he guided the young women out of the stable, he couldn't help but notice how Emily stopped to whisper something in Midnight Prince's ear, and how the horse responded with a soft whinny, almost like a farewell between old friends. The rain continued to fall, but it now seemed to carry not only water, but also long-kept secrets ready to burst. Jonathan knew, watching the twins cross the garden towards the house, that his life and the Ashford family's history was about to change forever. What he did not yet know was that same night an urgent telegram was on its way, bringing news of his son, Edward, and that, in the mansion's attic, an old box of documents protected by decades of dust contained the key to a mystery that connected all the presents in a way no one could imagine. The storm outside was just the beginning. The morning dawned over the Ashford estate, carrying the last remnants of the night's storm. The sun, still shy between the dissipating clouds, illuminated the damage caused by the rain, fallen branches on the immaculate garden, scattered flowers, and puddles reflecting the sky like broken mirrors. Victoria was the first to wake up, her green eyes scanning the luxurious guest room with a mix of admiration and wariness. Beside her, Emily was still asleep, her face finally serene after weeks of fleeing. The clothes lent by Martha Jenkins rested on a Louis XVI chair, simple pieces, but infinitely better than their soaked garments from the previous night. A light knock on the door announced Martha's arrival. The housekeeper entered with a breakfast tray, her face a facade of professional efficiency that barely masked her curiosity. "Mr. Ashford expects you at the stable in an hour," she announced, her eyes lingering a moment too long on Victoria's features. "Michael will show you your tasks." "Tasks?" Emily, who had just woken up, sat up in bed with natural grace. "Mr. Jonathan assumed you would prefer to work rather than accept charity," replied Martha, with a slight tone of challenge in her voice. "Unless I misunderstood your intentions of staying." Victoria stood up, meeting the housekeeper's gaze. "No, Mrs. Jenkins, you understood perfectly." After Martha left, the sisters exchanged a significant look. Working in the stable, near the horses, was exactly what they needed. Perhaps, Victoria thought, it was even too providential. In the stable, Jonathan supervised the reorganization after the storm. Midnight Prince seemed particularly agitated, softly neighing every time footsteps approached the door. When the twins finally entered, the stallion immediately stretched his neck towards them. "Extraordinary," murmured Jonathan, observing how the two young women approached the horse with a disconcerting familiarity. "Midnight Prince rarely accepts strangers." "He doesn't see us as strangers," Emily commented softly, her hands gently resting on the animal's neck. "Horses sense things we can't explain." Michael Jenkins, a middle-aged man with a sun-marked face, approached carrying saddlery equipment. His expert eyes assessed the twins with professional interest. "Do you know the basics of working with horses?" he asked. Victoria gave a slight smile. "Our mother was," she hesitated for a moment, "an excellent trainer." Jonathan noted the hesitation, mentally adding it to other small inconsistencies he was beginning to notice about the Winters sisters. The morning passed with the twins demonstrating a mastery that even surprised Michael. Emily, in particular, showed exceptional talent with a nervous foal that had resisted training for weeks. It was around noon when Dr. Henry Sterling arrived for his weekly visit. The young veterinarian, in his 30s and with gentle manners, stopped short upon seeing Emily skillfully handling the difficult foal. "Impressive," he commented, approaching Jonathan. "Your new employee seems to have a natural gift." "Employees," Jonathan corrected. "They are twins." As if to confirm his words, Victoria emerged from a stall carrying cleaning tools. Dr. Sterling could not hide his surprise upon seeing their identical faces. The afternoon brought new commotion to the estate. Emily Jenkins, the young housemaid, ran to the stable with a troubled expression. "Mr. Ashford, Mrs. Jenkins needs to see you immediately. It's about—" She lowered her voice, casting a furtive glance at the twins. "Mrs. Ophelia's jewelry." Jonathan felt his stomach knot. The jewelry of his late wife were family heirlooms, guarded with almost religious vigilance by Martha. In the house's office, the housekeeper awaited him with a grave expression. On the mahogany table lay an open velvet box, empty. "Mrs. Ophelia's pearls are missing," announced Martha, her voice trembling slightly. "And they are not the only pieces missing." Jonathan closed his eyes for a moment, recalling the sweet scent he had smelled in the stable the previous night. Could it be that? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of hooves on the gravel of the entrance. Through the office window, he saw an elegant car pull up, a black Bentley he knew all too well. "Edward," he murmured, recognizing the tall, imposing figure of his son getting out of the vehicle. In the stable, unaware of the arrival that would change everything, Victoria and Emily continued their work. It was Emily who first noticed something strange in Midnight Prince's behavior. The stallion was suddenly agitated, his ears turned towards the stable entrance. Firm steps on the gravel, a shadow at the door. "This can't be." Edward Ashford's deep voice cut through the air like a blade. "You?" Victoria dropped the brush she was holding, the metallic sound echoing in the silent stable. Emily paled, her hands gripping the foal's mane as if seeking support. "Edward," Jonathan appeared just behind his son. "You know them?" The air in the stable became heavy with unspoken tensions. Dr. Sterling, who was still examining one of the horses, watched the scene with growing interest. "No is a strong word, Father," replied Edward, his eyes fixed on the twins. "Let's say we crossed paths under interesting circumstances." At that moment, a sudden wind blew through the open stable doors, causing a few papers to fall from a nearby clipboard. As everyone rushed to pick up the scattered documents, an old photograph slipped among the pages, a yellowed image showing a young woman with a prize horse. On the back, a date and a name, Beatrice Winters, 1999. It was Dr. Sterling who picked up the photo, his eyes widening as he noticed the striking resemblance between the woman in the photo and the twins in front of him. "I believe," he said, handing the photo to Jonathan, "we have much to discuss." Edward Ashford nervously adjusted his expensive tie. "Father, we need to talk in private." But Jonathan could not take his eyes off the photograph he held. The pieces of a long-forgotten puzzle were beginning to assemble in his mind, awakening memories he would have preferred to keep buried. "Martha," he called, his voice firmer than he felt, "prepare the living room and bring that box from the attic. You know which one." The twins exchanged worried looks. Emily took a step forward, her voice surprisingly firm. "Mr. Ashford, perhaps we should explain—" "No," interrupted Edward. "You shouldn't, not yet." The distant thunder announced another storm to come. In the stable, Midnight Prince softly neighed as if he too felt the weight of the secrets about to be revealed. The morning that had begun with promises of a fresh start now seemed to herald something much more complex. As the group headed towards the house, no one noticed Emily Jenkins slipping silently out of the stable, a small velvet package hidden under her apron. The living room of the Ashford estate, with its period furniture and imposing portraits, seemed to shrink under the tension filling the room. Jonathan occupied his favorite armchair, the photograph of Beatrice Winters still in hand, while Edward stood near the fireplace, his rigid posture betraying his discomfort. Martha returned carrying an old carved wooden box, the dust of decades still clinging to its edges. Her hesitant steps to the coffee table did not go unnoticed by Victoria, who observed every movement with almost feline attention. "Shall I sit down?" Jonathan ordered the twins, his voice carrying an authority that left no room for objection. Emily chose the sofa near the window, instinctively drawn to a possible escape route. Victoria remained standing near her sister, a protective hand on her shoulder. "This photo," Jonathan began, "was taken the day Stardream won the National Grand Prix. Beatrice was—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Radiant." "Our mother," Emily murmured, "never told us about that day." Edward laughed joylessly. "There are many things Beatrice chose not to tell, aren't there?" Dr. Henry Sterling, invited to stay at Jonathan's insistence, observed the scene with almost clinical interest. His eyes moved from the twins to the portraits on the walls, searching for invisible connections. Martha began to open the box with trembling hands. The smell of old paper and buried secrets filled the air. The first thing she pulled out was a yellowed newspaper article. "Scandal among traditional breeders. The Ashford property involved in fraud accusations at equestrian competitions." "It was 25 years ago," said Jonathan, his voice heavy with memories. "The year everything changed." Victoria took a step forward, her eyes fixed on the article. The year our mother left. Left? Edward's sharp voice intervened. Is that what we call it now? Edward, Jonathan warned, let them speak. But before either of the twins could continue, Emily Jenkins burst into the room, her face as pale as paper. Mrs. Jenkins, in the guest room, the jewelry. Martha stood up abruptly, but Victoria was quicker. We didn't do anything, she declared firmly, and we can prove it. Emily opened her worn bag, pulling out a small notebook. We knew we would be the first suspect, so you photographed every room you entered since your arrival, completed Dr. Sterling, surprising everyone. I saw you doing it in the stable this morning. I thought you were just documenting the horses. Jonathan took the notebook, flipping through the pages filled with meticulous notes and photos, taken with an old cell phone. Schedules, locations, witnesses. Everything was documented with almost obsessive precision. Interesting, he murmured. It looks like you have experience defending yourself against false accusations. Edward moved nervously. Father, there's something you need to know about the night Beatrice. A particularly loud thunder interrupted Edward, making the windows rattle. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. The generators, sighed Martha, should have turned on automatically. I'll check, offered Dr. Sterling, standing up. No, said Jonathan. Michael knows the system. Emily, please ask him to take a look. In the darkness, the sound of rustling papers drew everyone's attention. A flickering light Victoria had turned on her phone's flashlight revealed more documents that Martha was pulling out of the box. Letters, explained the housekeeper, all returned unopened. All addressed to Beatrice, added Jonathan. For 25 years I tried to find her. Lies, exploded Emily, surprising even her sister. Our mother never received any letters. She waited for years. The light suddenly came back on, revealing tears in Emily's eyes and a strange expression on Edward's face. Maybe, he said slowly, neither side has the whole story. Jonathan stood up, heading towards a small bar in the corner of the room. He poured himself a glass of cognac, his movements deliberately slow, as if buying time to organize his thoughts. When Beatrice left, he began, she didn't just take her talent with horses, she also took the truth about the competition scandal, completed Victoria, about who actually rigged the results. Jonathan's glass stopped halfway to his lips. How do you know? Our mother kept a journal, explained Emily. We found it after she... Her voice choked. After she what? Asked Edward, approaching the twins for the first time. After she disappeared, replied Victoria, holding his gaze. 3 months ago. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain against the windows. Dr. Sterling, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. The documents I found this morning in the stable, about a mare named Midnight Secret. Midnight Prince's mother, confirmed Jonathan. According to the records, she belonged to Beatrice Winters, continued the veterinarian. But she was registered under the Ashford name after the fraud, completed Edward bitterly. After you falsely accused me, a new voice cut through the air. Everyone turned towards the door. There, drenched by the rain and marked by the years, stood Beatrice Winters. Time seemed to freeze. Victoria and Emily stood up in unison but remained motionless. Jonathan dropped his glass, the sound of shattering crystal echoing in the room. Edward staggered as if he had been struck. Mom, murmured Emily. Martha was the first to recover, advancing with a blanket she took from the sofa. But Beatrice raised a hand to stop her. I'm not here for comfort, she declared. I'm here for the truth, and I've come, her eyes met Jonathan's, because it's time for everyone to know what really happened that night, about the true heir of the Ashfords. In the stable, Midnight Prince neighed loudly as if sensing the presence of his former mistress. The storm raged outside, but inside the Ashford estate, the real tempest was just beginning. The morning after the revelations in the library brought a troubling calm to the Ashford estate. Jonathan was in his office, surrounded by old documents, when Dr. Nathaniel Jenkins, the family doctor for 3 decades, arrived unannounced. The test results you requested, Jonathan, said the doctor, placing a sealed envelope on the mahogany desk. I must admit the conclusions are puzzling. Jonathan looked up from the documents he was examining. About Edward? Not just about him, replied Dr. Jenkins, adjusting his gold-rimmed glasses. I compared them with old medical records, those I found on Beatrice Winters and, well, on Nicholas. The name of the lost son visibly made Jonathan shiver. Outside, silent footsteps retreated. Victoria, who had been eavesdropping, decided it was time to act on her own. In their temporary room, Emily was organizing a series of old photographs that Martha had found in the attic. Her sister entered hastily, closing the door. "We need to find Henry Drake," declared Victoria, her green eyes shining with determination. "The private detective, why?" "Because," Victoria lowered her voice, "I just heard about medical records that could prove we are actually—" A noise in the hallway interrupted her. It was Edward, visibly agitated, talking to someone on the phone. "No matter the cost," his voice echoed. "Find all the records from that time and destroy them." The twins exchanged a significant look. Emily took her old cell phone and quickly drafted a message to Dr. Sterling, who had proven to be an unlikely ally. In town, Henry Drake, a middle-aged detective with sharp eyes, received an unexpected visit in his modest office. "Mr. Rothschild," greeted Drake, welcoming the elegant lawyer who had just entered. "To what do I owe this honor?" Edmund Rothschild, the Ashford family lawyer for generations, placed an old file on the detective's desk. Maximilian Ashford had specific instructions. This file was to be delivered if certain circumstances arose. What circumstances? The return of Beatrice Winters. Meanwhile, at the estate, Dr. Jenkins continued his conversation with Jonathan. "Edward's blood type," explained the doctor, "is not only incompatible with yours, Jonathan, but with the entire documented Ashford lineage. However, I found an interesting match in the hospital archives." "With whom?" "With the Laurent family. More specifically, with the deceased brother of Celeste Laurent." Jonathan felt the weight of this revelation. Celeste, Edward's ex-wife, had always seemed to know more than she revealed. In the stable, Dr. Sterling was examining Midnight Prince when he received Emily's message. The veterinarian immediately noticed the stallion's agitation, as if the animal sensed that secrets were about to be exposed. Henry Drake, after examining the documents brought by Rothschild, made an urgent call. "Dr. Jenkins, I found something you need to see about the night of the 1975 fire." The pieces were beginning to assemble, but they formed a darker puzzle than anyone had imagined. Edward, after his phone call, headed to the stable. His erratic behavior did not escape Michael Jenkins, who immediately alerted Martha. "He's rummaging through the old records," whispered the caretaker. "He's looking for something specific." In Drake's office, the detective and Rothschild were uncovering a shocking truth. "Maximilian didn't just switch the babies," murmured Rothschild, reading the documents. "He orchestrated an entire plan to cover something much bigger, something involving international trafficking," completed Drake. "The horses were just a front." Back at the estate, Jonathan received another unexpected visit. Celeste Laurent, as elegant as ever, entered unannounced. "I've come to tell the truth about my brother," she declared, "and about the real reason Edward married me." The twins, who had been discreetly following Edward to the stable, witnessed something troubling. Their supposed uncle moved a floorboard, revealing a secret compartment. "There," whispered Emily, "those are the same symbols as on the old photo." Victoria discreetly took photos of the marks on the compartment, symbols that matched those found in Maximilian's documents. Dr. Jenkins, after receiving the information from Drake, urgently headed to the estate. On the way, he called Jonathan. "Don't let Edward leave the property. The DNA tests confirmed it. He is not only not your son, he is Celeste Laurent's nephew, and he is involved with the same group that—" The line abruptly cut off. In the stable, Edward found what he was looking for, an old ledger with coded entries of Maximilian's true operations. "It's over, Edward," declared Henry Drake's voice behind him. The detective had arrived silently, accompanied by Edmund Rothschild. "You don't understand," Edward laughed nervously. "It was never about inheritance, it was always about keeping the secret. The empire Maximilian built is still active. And you're part of it," appeared Jonathan at the stable entrance, his voice laden with disappointment. The twins, still hidden, saw Celeste Laurent approaching as well. "Edward," she called softly, "it's over. My brother confessed everything before he died, about how Maximilian used our baby. To replace the true heir of the Ashfords." "Why?" Jonathan's voice trembled. "Why this complex baby substitution?" "Because," replied Henry Drake, Nicholas wasn't just your son, Jonathan. He was living proof that Maximilian had falsified property documents, documents that allowed him to use the Ashford stables for... A sharp whinny from Midnight Prince interrupted the revelation. The stallion, agitated, was pawing the ground insistently at the spot where another secret compartment seemed to be hidden. "The horses always knew," murmured Dr. Sterling, who had just arrived. "That's why Midnight Prince never accepted Edward. The Ashford bloodline. The true heirs?" Beatrice Winters appeared at the stable entrance, her presence causing a general shockwave. "My daughters, the true heirs of the Ashford estate." The confrontation in the stable reached its climax as Jonathan, pale and trembling, faced the truth about decades of lies. Beatrice remained at the entrance, her presence causing waves of tension to ripple through the air. "So everything," Jonathan stammered, clutching his chest, "everything was an elaborate lie by my own father?" Edward, still holding the ledger, observed the scene with a mix of despair and resignation. "Jonathan, father, Don't call me father." Jonathan's outburst was followed by a groan of pain. He leaned against a stable partition, his face now covered in a fine film of sweat. "Jonathan!" Beatrice was the first to grasp the gravity of the situation, running towards him. Dr. Sterling, fortunately still present, immediately took charge. "He's having a heart attack. Call an ambulance." Chaos erupted in the stable. As Martha ran to the house to make the call, Edward took advantage of the confusion to try to flee through the back. However, Henry Drake blocked his path. "The documents, Edward," demanded the detective. It was then that the unthinkable happened. A pungent smell of smoke began to fill the air, and Midnight Prince neighed in panic. "Fire!" shouted Michael, pointing to a spot where small flames were beginning to lick the old wooden walls of the stable. Victoria and Emily emerged from their hiding place, adrenaline replacing fear. Years of experience with horses guided them instinctively. "Emily, grab the emergency harnesses," commanded Victoria, already running towards the first stall. "We must evacuate them all." The fire spread at a frightening speed, as if fueled by something other than dry wood. Dr. Sterling and Drake tried to move Jonathan, now semi-conscious, out of the stable. "The documents!" shouted Beatrice upon seeing the ledger still in Edward's hands. In a swift move, she snatched it from him, but other loose pages fell, scattering on the burning floor. It was then that Archibald Pembroke, the family banker, appeared at the stable entrance. "My God, it started!" he exclaimed, his usually impassive face contorted with horror. The twins worked in perfect synchronization, freeing one horse after another. However, Midnight Prince stubbornly refused to leave his stall, as if he knew something important was hidden there. "Victoria!" called Emily, coughing from the increasingly dense smoke. "There's something under the straw." As the flames advanced, Victoria dove into Midnight Prince's stall, her hands groping until she found an old leather wallet sealed with the Ashford emblem. Outside, the ambulance finally arrived. Jonathan was being attended to, Beatrice holding his hand as the paramedics worked. "The original records," murmured Archibald Pembroke, recognizing the wallet Victoria was carrying. "Maximilian had me keep copies, proof of what really happened to Nicholas." Martha, returning from the house, gasped upon seeing the wallet. "The journal. It matches the journal I found." The flames now consumed a large part of the historic structure. Edward, in a moment of apparent redemption, was helping to save the last horses. "Are all the animals safe?" asked Dr. Sterling, counting the horses. "The Midnight Prince," shouted Emily. The stallion was still inside the burning stable. It was Beatrice who reacted, decades of connection with horses guiding her steps. She entered the inferno of smoke and flames, murmuring words only the animal could understand. Moments later, to everyone's great surprise, Beatrice and Midnight Prince emerged from the flames, covered in soot but unharmed. "The documents," Archibald Pembroke approached Victoria, who was firmly holding the wallet. "They prove that Maximilian didn't just switch the babies, he orchestrated Nicholas's disappearance when the truth threatened to come out." Martha emerged with an old journal. "And this confirms everything," she said, her hands trembling. "Ophelia Ashford's journal, Maximilian's wife. She discovered the truth and paid the price." As the firefighters finally arrived and began to control the fire, the group gathered in the safety of the garden. Jonathan, now stabilized but needing hospitalization, weakly held Beatrice's hand. "Read them," he murmured, pointing to the documents. Victoria opened the wallet with trembling hands, while Emily held Ophelia's journal. The words they found changed everything. "Maximilian didn't just build an empire through smuggling," read Victoria. "He sacrificed his own grandson to protect his secrets." "And Mum," continued Emily, tears in her eyes, "our mother didn't flee. She was forced to hide to protect us." Archibald Pembroke gravely nodded. "That's why I kept copies of everything. I knew that one day the truth would have to come out." Edward, covered in soot and apparently broken, finally spoke. "I didn't know it's about Nicholas. I only discovered that I wasn't a true Ashford. For the rest of the operations, I was just following orders." As the historic structure of the stable collapsed under the flames, taking decades of secrets with it, a new truth emerged from the ashes. The twins were not only the legitimate heirs of the Ashfords, they were the survivors of a conspiracy that had cost their father's life and nearly destroyed their mother. Jonathan was taken to the hospital, but not before making a final statement. "It's time to rebuild, not just the stable, but our family. Without lies this time." Dawn broke over a changed Ashford family, but perhaps finally on the path to truth and redemption. St. Mary's Hospital maintained a respectful calm as Jonathan recovered from his heart attack. In the hallway, Victoria and Emily waited for news, still marked by the soot of the previous night, when the sound of elegant heels caught their attention. Celeste Laurent approached them, her aristocratic posture contrasting with the pallor of her usually impassive face. In her hands, she held a red leather wallet that seemed out of place in this hospital environment. "My dears," she said in a tone softened by a French accent, "it's time you knew the other side of this story." Before she could continue, Dr. Henry Sterling emerged from Jonathan's room, his tired features softening upon seeing Emily. Their eyes met briefly, sharing a silent understanding. "He's stable," informed the doctor, "but we need to keep him under observation." "Very well," said Celeste, "because what I have to reveal will change everything you think you know about Beatrice Winters." Meanwhile, at the estate, Edward was frantically searching Jonathan's office. Michael Jenkins, the old caretaker, observed him silently from the door. "Are you looking for this?" asked Michael, revealing a small worn black notebook. "Your grandfather, Maximilian, gave me this to keep. He said one day it would be necessary." Edward froze. You knew?" "I've always known," replied Michael, his voice laden with decades of secrets. "I was there the night it all began, the night Beatrice and your mother—" At the hospital, Celeste opened her red wallet, spreading old photos on a table in the private waiting room. "Look," she said, pointing to a particular photo, "here is the original group. Maximilian Ashford, my brother Gerard, and—" she hesitated, "Beatrice." The twins leaned in to examine the image. It showed a group of elegant young people in front of a stable, all smiling, seemingly carefree. "Our mother worked with your brother?" asked Victoria. "Not just worked," replied Celeste. "They discovered Maximilian's system together and they paid the price." Dr. Sterling, who had stayed to listen, noted that Emily was paling. Discreetly, he offered silent support by placing a hand on hers. "The system was brilliant in its simplicity," continued Celeste. "The prize horses were just a front. Behind it hid an international network of—" "Money laundering," completed a new voice. It was Henry Drake, the detective, arriving with more documents. The competition prizes were just the tip of the iceberg. At the estate, Michael continued his revelations to Edward. "Your biological mother, Gerard Laurent's sister, didn't die in childbirth as you were told. She was silenced, just as they tried to silence Beatrice." Edward staggered to a chair. Why integrate me into the Ashford family?" "For control," replied Michael. "Maximilian needed an heir he could manipulate. Nicholas was too honest." At the hospital, Celeste continued to reveal photographs. Beatrice and Gerard had discovered irregularities in the accounting records. Astronomical sums were circulating through competition prizes that had never taken place. But when they tried to reveal the truth— "Nicholas died," whispered Emily, instinctively squeezing Dr. Sterling's hand. "No," corrected Celeste. "Nicholas was protected for a time, just long enough to have you two. The accident that killed him happened later." Henry Drake spread out his own documents next to those of Celeste. "I found records of bank transfers," he explained, "all linked to an account in the Cayman Islands in the name of—" "Edward Laurent," completed Celeste. My nephew raised as an Ashford to continue Maximilian's dirty legacy. At the estate, Edward was frantically flipping through the black notebook Michael had given him. "There must be a way out," he murmured. "I still have access to the accounts I can offer." "No," interrupted Michael firmly. "Enough bribes, enough lies." At the hospital, Dr. Sterling noticed something on the photographs. "These marks on the horses," he pointed out, alerted by his veterinary expertise, "are not normal breeding records." "Codes," explained Henry Drake. "Each prize horse bore a specific mark. It was their way of identifying—" "Special shipments," completed Celeste. "Drugs, forged documents, money." Victoria suddenly understood. That's why Midnight Prince never accepted Edward. The horses always knew. "Yes," Celeste nodded. "The Ashford blood, the true Ashford blood, has always had a special connection with the horses. Just like you two do." Emily abruptly stood up, an idea forming in her mind. "Dr. Sterling," she called, "those tests you performed on Midnight Prince." The veterinarian nodded, understanding. "The genetic markers, they match the original records of the Ashford lineage, before Maximilian began his operations." "We need to return to the estate," declared Victoria, "now." But before they could leave, Beatrice appeared at the waiting room door, her face marked by recent tears. "It's not necessary," she said. "Edward just confessed everything to Jonathan, and there's more. It's about the night Gerard died." Celeste stood up, trembling. "My brother, you were there?" "Yes," replied Beatrice. "And now it's time for everyone to know the whole truth about the pact we made to protect not only Nicholas and the twins, but also—" An alarm sounded in Jonathan's room, interrupting the revelation. Dr. Sterling rushed inside, followed by the medical team. "He's having another attack," someone shouted. As chaos ensued, Emily noticed something falling from Celeste's pocket, an old key bearing the Laurent family emblem. "The final piece," murmured Celeste, seeing Emily's gaze. "The final proof is in the safe at the old Laurent property, and only Jonathan knows how to open it." The night stretched on at St. Mary's Hospital as Jonathan slowly recovered from his attack. In the waiting room, the group discussed the new revelations when Martha Jenkins entered hastily, out of breath and holding an old box. "I found it," she exclaimed, "exactly where Constance said it would be." Beatrice, who had been watching the rain through the window, turned slowly, her eyes fixed on the box Martha was carrying, a box she hadn't seen in 25 years. "Ophelia's journal," murmured Beatrice. "So Constance really kept it all these years." Constance Jenkins emerged from the hallway shadows, her usually stern face marked by rare emotion. "It's time I confess my role in all of this," declared the housekeeper. "Ophelia entrusted this to me before she died. She knew everything." Henry Drake, who had just returned with additional documents, approached, interested. "Mrs. Jenkins," he asked, "you always knew Beatrice was alive?" "Not only alive," replied Constance, sitting heavily. "I helped plan her disappearance." This revelation plunged the room into stunned silence. Victoria and Emily exchanged incredulous looks, while Dr. Sterling instinctively placed a comforting hand on Emily's shoulder. "It was the night of the so-called accident," began Constance, her voice trembling. "Ophelia had discovered the documents proving Maximilian's involvement in the international network. She had also discovered the baby switch." Martha carefully opened the box, revealing a red leather-bound journal and several yellowed letters. "Ophelia had written everything," continued Constance, "about how Maximilian used the prize horses as a front, about Edward's true identity, about the plan to protect Nicholas." "Curse, but something went wrong," interrupted Beatrice, approaching the box. "Ophelia died before she could expose the truth." "No," corrected Constance, tears now freely flowing down her face. "She was silenced, and I was there." Henry Drake laid out his own documents on the table. "I found the police reports from that time," he explained. "Ophelia's death was recorded as a domestic accident, but there are obvious inconsistencies in the report." "Maximilian poisoned her," revealed Constance. "But before that, she gave me this." She removed a small USB drive from a cord she wore around her neck. All the evidence, all the records, digitized and kept for 25 years. Martha, who had begun reading the journal, suddenly stopped, shocked. "Here," she exclaimed, "an entry about the night Nicholas was born. The baby bears the Ashford mark, a small crescent-shaped birthmark behind the left ear." Victoria instinctively touched her left ear, where an identical mark was hidden under her hair. Emily made the same gesture, revealing the same mark. "The final proof of the Ashford bloodline," murmured Dr. Sterling. "A genetic mark documented in the family for generations." Beatrice approached her daughters, gently touching the marks that confirmed their lineage. "When I discovered I was pregnant with twins," she explained, "I knew I had to protect them at all costs. Ophelia and Constance, they made it possible." Henry Drake consulted his documents again. "The plan was perfect," he said. "A simulated accident, a new identity. But why come back now?" "Because," replied Beatrice, "Maximilian is dead, but his organization remains active." At that moment, Dr. Jenkins entered the room, his face grave. "Jonathan is stable," he announced, "and he wants to see you, Beatrice. He has something to reveal about the night Nicholas died." Constance opened Ophelia's journal, flipping to the last pages. "Here," she said, her voice trembling. "The final entry, Nicholas discovered something terrible, something beyond the smuggling network. Maximilian is not just going to silence him, he's going to use his death to consolidate Edward's power in the organization," completed Henry Drake. "The accident that killed Nicholas wasn't just to silence him. It was an initiation rite," concluded Beatrice with bitterness. "Edward had to prove his loyalty." Martha, still immersed in the box's contents, found a photograph that chilled her to the bone. "Mrs. Winters," she called hesitantly, "this photo, it's from the day of the accident." The photograph showed Nicholas next to his car, a few hours before the tragedy. But the important detail was in the background. Edward, partially hidden in the shadows, holding an object in his hands. "A wrench," observed Henry Drake. The forensic reports indicated that the brakes had been sabotaged. Emily, trembling before this revelation, clung to Victoria. Dr. Sterling placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "That's not all," announced Constance, connecting the USB drive to a laptop. "Ophelia didn't just document the crimes, she mapped the entire organization, names, dates, bank accounts. That's why Maximilian killed her," understood Beatrice. "She wasn't just a witness, she was the greatest threat to his empire." "And now," added Henry Drake, "we have everything we need to dismantle what's left of this empire." At that precise moment, a cry echoed in the hallway. Celeste Laurent on the phone seemed distressed. "The Laurent property," she exclaimed. "Someone broke into the safe." "Edward," murmured Constance. "He must have discovered the existence of the original documents." "No," interrupted Martha, her voice trembling. "It wasn't Edward. I saw who entered the property this afternoon. It was—" Before she could finish, the hospital lights flickered and went out. In the darkness, the sound of approaching footsteps made everyone hold their breath. "Well, well," a familiar voice broke the silence. "What a charming family reunion." When the emergency lights came on, everyone was stunned to see the silhouette in the doorway. Michael Jenkins, the Ashford caretaker, holding a gun. "You know, Beatrice," he continued with a cold smile, "Maximilian always said you would return, and he paid me handsomely to be here when it happened." Beatrice straightened up, facing the man she had trusted for years. "Michael," she said calmly, "you've been complicit from the beginning." "Complicit is an understatement," he replied, his smile widening. "I am the link that held it all together. Maximilian would have wanted you to know that your return changes nothing. The empire endures." Michael Jenkins, the caretaker of the Ashford estate, holding a gun. "You know, Beatrice," he continued with a cold smile, "Maximilian always said you would come back, and he paid me handsomely to be here when it happened." Beatrice straightened up, facing the man she had believed loyal for years. "Michael," she said calmly, "you've been complicit from the start." "Complicit is too weak a word," he replied, his smile widening. "I am the link that held all this together. Maximilian would have wanted you to know that your return changes nothing. The empire endures." Emily and Victoria exchanged a quick look, searching for an opportunity to disarm Michael. Celeste slowly backed towards the door, trying not to attract attention. "And now?" asked Beatrice defiantly. "Are you going to shoot?" "I might not need to," replied Michael, "because everything you have, everything you think you know, will soon burn, just like the stable." At that moment, Dr. Sterling stepped forward. "You're not leaving here with those documents, Michael. You're not as untouchable as you think." The tension in the room reached its peak, each person seeming to hold their breath, waiting for the outcome. Before Michael could respond, a sudden noise in the hallway diverted everyone's attention. Celeste had discreetly opened the door and signaled to the hospital security guards, who quickly burst in. Caught by surprise, Michael tried to raise his weapon, but Victoria and Emily, with quick reflexes, seized the opportunity. Victoria grabbed his arm, while Emily struck his hand, causing the gun to fall to the floor. The security guards subdued Michael in seconds, handcuffing him under the shocked but relieved gazes of the assembly. "It's over, Michael," declared Beatrice, her gaze filled with determination. "You no longer have any control over us." As Michael was escorted out of the room, he turned to Beatrice one last time. "You think you've won, but the Empire is much bigger than you. You've only seen the surface." Beatrice remained silent, but her clenched hands showed she knew the battle was not completely over. In the next moment, Constance resumed searching through the USB drive's documents. "We have everything we need here," she said. "Michael was just a cog in a much larger machine." Henry Drake nodded. "We now have enough evidence to implicate every key person in this network, including those still operating in the shadows." "And the Laurent property?" asked Celeste, still in shock. "If Michael was here, who tried to break into the safe?" At that moment, Martha, still trembling, timidly answered, "It was a man I don't know, but he was wearing a badge that looked like one from a government agency." "That complicates things," murmured Henry Drake. "We'll have to act quickly before this evidence is compromised." Beatrice turned to Victoria and Emily, a proud gleam in her eyes. "You proved today that you are ready to reclaim what is rightfully yours." Emily, still in shock from the event, squeezed her sister's hands. "We've survived so much, but we can't face everything alone." "You're not alone," declared Jonathan, who entered the room supported by a doctor, but visibly determined to get involved. "I'm still here for you, despite my past mistakes." Beatrice placed a hand on Jonathan's shoulder, a gesture of silent but powerful reconciliation. In the hours that followed, a strategy was devised. The documents and evidence were transferred to a secure location with the help of Henry Drake and Celeste's legal team. Meanwhile, at the estate, the firefighters had managed to completely extinguish the stable fire. Although the main structure was destroyed, the foundations remained solid, symbolic of the family itself. "We will rebuild," declared Victoria, looking at the debris. "Not just this stable, but everything this family has destroyed." Emily at her side nodded. "This time we will do it right, without lies, without betrayals." A few days later, in a local courtroom, Michael and several other accomplices were indicted thanks to the overwhelming evidence presented by Henry Drake and the legal team. The judge, after a long hearing, declared that Maximilian's network was officially dismantled, offering a belated sense of justice to the family. Back at the estate, a ceremony was organized to honor the truths revealed and the new foundations established. The Equestrian Center was renamed the Isabella Winters Rehabilitation Center, in tribute to Beatrice's sister and her role in protecting the family. Beatrice, speaking at the ceremony, declared, "Today we close a dark chapter of our history, but what we build here will carry hope for generations to come." Jonathan, now more humble and reconciled with his past, made a final announcement. The Ashford fortune will be used to transform this estate into a beacon of healing and redemption. Edward, who had regained some dignity after helping to bring down the Empire, stood aside, observing the family he had, in a way, helped save. "You are still part of this family," Victoria told him, approaching. "No matter the mistakes, we move forward together." The ceremony ended with a sense of renewal. The twins, now recognized as the true heirs of the Ashfords, took their place as leaders of the new chapter in the family's history. As the evening drew to a close, Beatrice looked at the stars from the garden, feeling a sense of peace for the first time in decades. "Isabella," she murmured, thinking of her sister, "we did it. We finally brought light back to this estate." The Ashford estate, once a symbol of secrets and betrayals, became a place of healing, truth, and redemption. Under a starry sky, the family stood united, ready to face a future finally freed from the shadows of the past. A few months later, the Ashford estate radiated new energy. The reconstruction of the stable had begun, but the rest of the estate was already transformed into a therapy and rehabilitation center, welcoming visitors from around the world. Victoria supervised the Equestrian Center, implementing innovative programs combining horse care and therapies for traumatized children, veterans, and even burned-out executives. Horses teach us patience and trust, she explained to a group of international therapists who came to learn her methods. They respond to our emotions, they heal as we do. Emily, on the other hand, managed the center's finances and logistics. Her methodical mind optimized resources while expanding the program's impact. One day, while exploring the grounds surrounding the estate, the twins discovered an old abandoned chapel. With Beatrice, they decided to restore it to create a place of reflection and contemplation for the patients. "This chapel can become a symbol of renewal," declared Beatrice. "A place where everyone can reconnect with themselves and find peace." Meanwhile, Jonathan worked on a project close to his heart, writing a book about the Ashford family's history, but this time without hiding the dark truths. "The truth must be told, even if it's uncomfortable," he explained to Henry Drake, who was helping him verify the facts. "We can only move forward by accepting our past." Edward, although still seeking redemption, fully invested himself in the center. He led a program dedicated to troubled youth, sharing his experience to help them avoid the mistakes he had made. "I can't change the past," he confided to a group of young people during a session, "but I can make sure others don't follow the same path." The restored chapel was inaugurated a few weeks later, during an emotional ceremony. Beatrice spoke, honoring the memory of her sister Isabella and all those who had sacrificed their lives for the truth. "Isabella taught me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to move forward despite it," she said, tears in her eyes. "This estate is now a testament to her courage." Emily added, "We rebuilt this place not just for us, but for all those seeking a second chance." Victoria concluded, "The horses, the land, and our hearts have been healed. This is our legacy, and we share it with the world." The Winters Ashford Foundation, as it had been renamed, quickly became a model for similar centers worldwide. Celeste Laurent, having regained her own dignity after helping dismantle her father's criminal network, continued to work with the foundation, overseeing international expansion. "You have turned a tragedy into hope," she declared to Beatrice during a meeting. "I am honored to be part of this journey." The estate hosted its first international summit on equine therapy rehabilitation, attracting experts from around the world. The twins spoke to share their vision. "We believe in the power of connection," declared Emily, "between horses, humans, and nature. And we believe in resilience," added Victoria. "Even the deepest wounds can be healed with the right support." Jonathan, in a rare moment of public introspection, concluded the summit by saying, "My father built an empire on power and lies. We have chosen to build on truth and love." As the estate prospered, an unexpected surprise arrived. Emily announced that she was expecting a child, news that brought joy and hope to the entire family. "A new chapter begins for all of us," declared Beatrice, embracing her daughter, "and this time it will be filled with light." The horses, symbols of healing and connection, continued to play a central role in the life of the estate. Midnight Prince, now old but still majestic, became a living emblem of resilience. A year after the fall of the criminal empire, the Winters Ashford Foundation had helped thousands of people through its programs, proving that renewal was possible even in the darkest circumstances. At a commemorative event, a plaque was unveiled in the chapel bearing a simple inscription, "In memory of those who sacrificed for truth and love." Beatrice, observing the plaque, murmured, "We have found peace, and we will continue to share it with those in need." As the sun set over the Ashford estate, a once broken family stood united, ready to face the future with courage and compassion. And so, in a place once marked by shadows, a new legacy of hope and resilience now shone for the world to see. Years later, the Ashford estate became an internationally recognized sanctuary. Visitors from around the world came seeking healing and hope within its grounds, inspired by the story of the Winters Ashford resilience. Victoria, now married to an equine therapy researcher, continued to passionately lead the equestrian center. Her innovative methods were adopted in similar centers worldwide. "Horses show us how to live in the present moment," she often explained. "They teach us to be vulnerable yet strong." Emily, now the mother of a young boy named Nicholas, managed the foundation's finances while raising her family with the support of Dr. Sterling, her husband. Their solid relationship inspired everyone around them. "Our children will grow up in a world where truth is a pillar, Not a secret, she said with conviction. Beatrice, finally free from the weight of secrets, dedicated herself to writing a book recounting her family's complete history. She worked closely with Jonathan, who had found new serenity in helping to share this truth. The Ashford story is not just about power, she wrote. It's a story of transformation, love, and redemption. Edward, now a respected mentor, managed a program for young adults seeking their path. He often traveled to speak about resilience and redemption, sharing lessons learned from his own mistakes. "We are not defined by our mistakes," he often declared. "We are defined by what we do with them." The Ashford estate continued to grow, adding programs focused on environmental sustainability, art therapy, and scientific research. Each initiative bore the mark of a commitment to healing and hope. On the 10th anniversary of the foundation, a large gathering was organized. Thousands of people came together to celebrate the impact of the estate and its mission. "This place," declared Victoria during her speech, "is proof that wounds can heal, that ashes can give birth to life." Emily added, "We have transformed secrets and betrayals into a force that supports others. This is our legacy." Beatrice, in a moment of reflection, turned to her gathered family. "We have found light in the darkness, and that light will continue to shine for generations to come." Jonathan, moved, concluded the event by saying, "I have made many mistakes, but seeing what my family has accomplished gives me hope that everything can be transformed." As the sun set over the estate that evening, the members of the Winters Ashford family stood united, ready to continue their mission of transforming lives, inspiring the world to find the strength to rise from the ashes of the past. In the years that followed, the Ashford estate not only prospered, but became a timeless sanctuary for those seeking refuge and hope. The Winters Ashford Foundation expanded far beyond French borders, establishing centers on every continent. Nicholas, now president of the World Council for Equine Therapy, continued to develop groundbreaking initiatives, including programs for marginalized populations and areas affected by natural disasters. Claire, strengthened by her experience in international law, created a global fund to support child survivors of conflict. This fund became a pillar of child protection, inspired by her own family's story. Victoria and Emily, although taking a more advisory role, continued to guide the foundation with wisdom. Their unbreakable bond remained the organization's pillar. The Ashford estate became a protected historical site, symbolizing not only the family's legacy, but also the history of a global movement. Each year, young people from diverse backgrounds stayed there, participating in leadership, resilience, and healing programs. Many of them drew inspiration from the Winters Ashford story to transform their own lives. During a celebration marking the foundation's 150th anniversary, a monumental mural was unveiled in the estate's Great Hall. It depicted the key figures of the family history, surrounded by the horses that had played a central role in their journey. "These faces," declared Nicholas during the inauguration, "remind us that true strength lies in love, truth, and the ability to rise again." The estate also hosted an interactive museum dedicated to the Winters Ashford history. This museum, designed to inspire visitors, traced their journey from the dark days of secrets to their transformation into a global symbol of hope. In the estate's gardens, a special section was created to honor the horses that had contributed to this transformation. Each horse received a commemorative plaque, highlighting their role in the healing stories. A new generation took up the mantle, proudly carrying the Winters Ashford legacy. The children and grandchildren of Victoria and Emily, raised in the spirit of compassion and truth, prepared to write their own chapter. During a family dinner, Claire addressed the gathered family members. "We have inherited a unique treasure, the ability to transform sorrow into hope. We must continue to honor this legacy." Victoria, moved by these words, added, "This estate has taught us that nothing is ever lost. Every scar, every mistake can become a source of strength." The Ashford estate, now a universal symbol of resilience, continued to touch millions of lives around the world. One day, a former patient, now a writer, published a book titled The Lights of Ashford. This book, dedicated to the Winters Ashford family, recounted his own journey of healing thanks to the estate. "This place," he wrote, "is not just a physical space, it's a home for the soul. A reminder that even the most broken hearts can be mended." The family, touched by these words, continued to receive testimonials from around the world, confirming that their mission far exceeded their initial dreams. Victoria, in her final years, dedicated her time to writing memoirs, hoping to capture the essence of what Ashford represented. Emily, ever devoted, ensured that the principles of truth and integrity remained at the heart of the Foundation's decisions. "We are merely guardians of this legacy," she often declared. "It is up to those who come after us to carry it even further." And so the Ashford estate endured, not only as a place but as a movement, an idea, a promise, one that even in darkness light can always be found and shared. Under the stars, surrounded by the stories it had helped write, the estate continued to shine. Every stone, every tree, every horse carried the memory of a family that had chosen truth, love, and redemption. And around the world, millions of souls found inspiration to write their own stories of transformation, guided by the eternal legacy of the Winters Ashford family. The years that followed reinforced the impact of the Ashford estate. New initiatives were launched, touching unexplored areas such as innovative therapies for people with neurological disorders and survivors of climate disasters. The research center, led by Nicholas, published several groundbreaking studies showing the impact of human-animal interaction on brain neuroplasticity. These discoveries attracted the attention of researchers and universities worldwide. Claire, now recognized as a key figure in human rights, launched a global campaign to support children displaced by conflicts. Inspired by her family's story, she used her voice to demand concrete actions from governments. "Every child deserves a sanctuary, a place where they can heal and dream," she declared at a United Nations conference. Her campaign, supported by the Winters Ashford Foundation, was adopted in more than 20 countries. The younger generations of the Winters Ashford family, motivated by this powerful legacy, contributed to expanding the Foundation's reach. A new program titled Gardens of Resilience was designed to offer natural healing spaces in urban areas. Victoria and Emily, still active despite their advanced age, were invited to a special ceremony at the estate. The regional mayor declared that day that Ashford was a living heritage of humanity. "This estate is proof that a story of pain can become an infinite source of light," he declared. The two sisters, moved by this tribute, humbly thanked him, recalling that it all began with an act of courage. The chapel, now at the center of the estate's spiritual activities, hosted an annual ceremony in memory of Isabella Winters and other family members who had sacrificed their safety to protect the truth. A new tradition was introduced, planting a tree for each person who found healing at the estate. Within a few years, a magnificent forest came to life, called the Forest of Healed Stories. This forest became a universal symbol. Visitors from around the world came to meditate, plant their own trees, or simply find inspiration. As the children and grandchildren of Victoria and Emily took over, they introduced modern technologies to amplify the Foundation's impact while staying true to its principles. One day, during a family meeting, Nicholas proposed an ambitious idea: creating a digital platform to share the Foundation's expertise with the world. The platform, named the Echo of Ashford, offered accessible resources to everyone, wherever they were. "We don't just touch lives here," explained Nicholas. "We have the potential to transform entire communities worldwide." Claire, on her side, established a partnership with artists and writers to capture the resilient stories inspired by Ashford. These stories were published in an anthology titled The Lights of Resilience. At its launch, Beatrice, attending virtually due to her advanced age, declared with pride, "Every word of these stories is a victory against darkness." Victoria, in her final days, watched with satisfaction as the next generations carried the family legacy. "You have all surpassed our wildest dreams," she said during a family dinner. "Ashford is in good hands." After her peaceful passing, a memorial was added in the forest with an inscription, "Victoria Winters Ashford, a life dedicated to love and truth." Emily, now the family matriarch, continued to oversee major decisions while telling the younger generations the stories of courage and resilience of their ancestors. "It's a living legacy," she often said. "We are the guardians of a treasure we must protect and share." The decades passed, and the Ashford estate became more than a place, a global movement embodying the possibility of transforming pain into strength, loss into hope, and secrets into truth. Under a sky filled with stars, the estate's lights continued to shine, reminding everyone that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way to the light. And so the Winters Ashford story continued, carried by the hearts they had touched, the lives they had changed, and the hopes they had rekindled across generations. The years that followed saw the Ashford estate not only thrive but become a timeless sanctuary for those seeking refuge and hope. The Winters Ashford Foundation expanded far beyond French borders, establishing centers on every continent. Nicholas, now president of the World Council for Equine Therapy, continued to develop groundbreaking initiatives, including programs for marginalized populations and areas affected by natural disasters. Claire, strengthened by her experience in international law, created a global fund to support child survivors of conflict. This fund became a pillar of child protection, inspired by her own family's story. Victoria and Emily, although taking a more advisory role, continued to guide the foundation with wisdom. Their unbreakable bond remained the organization's pillar. The Ashford estate became a protected historical site, symbolizing not only the family's legacy, but also the history of a global movement. Each year, young people from diverse backgrounds stayed there, participating in leadership, resilience, and healing programs. Many of them drew inspiration from the Winters Ashford story to transform their own lives. During a celebration marking the foundation's 150th anniversary, a monumental mural was unveiled in the estate's Great Hall. It depicted the key figures of the family history, surrounded by the horses that had played a central role in their journey. "These faces," declared Nicholas during the inauguration, "remind us that true strength lies in love, truth, and the ability to rise again." The estate also hosted an interactive museum dedicated to the Winters Ashford history. This museum, designed to inspire visitors, traced their journey from the dark days of secrets to their transformation into a global symbol of hope. In the estate's gardens, a special section was created to honor the horses that had contributed to this transformation. Each horse received a commemorative plaque, highlighting their role in the healing stories. A new generation took up the mantle, proudly carrying the Winters Ashford legacy. The children and grandchildren of Victoria and Emily, raised in the spirit of compassion and truth, prepared to write their own chapter. During a family dinner, Claire addressed the gathered family members. "We have inherited a unique treasure, the ability to transform sorrow into hope. We must continue to honor this legacy." Victoria, moved by these words, added, "This estate has taught us that nothing is ever lost. Every scar, every mistake can become a source of strength." The Ashford estate, now a universal symbol of resilience, continued to touch millions of lives around the world. One day, a former patient, now a writer, published a book titled The Lights of Ashford. This book, dedicated to the Winters Ashford family, recounted his own journey of healing thanks to the estate. "This place," he wrote, "is not just a physical space, it's a home for the soul. A reminder that even the most broken hearts can be mended." The family, touched by these words, continued to receive testimonials from around the world, confirming that their mission far exceeded their initial dreams. Victoria, in her final years, dedicated her time to writing memoirs, hoping to capture the essence of what Ashford represented. Emily, ever devoted, ensured that the principles of truth and integrity remained at the heart of the Foundation's decisions. "We are merely guardians of this legacy," she often declared. "It is up to those who come after us to carry it even further." And so the Ashford estate endured, not only as a place but as a movement, an idea, a promise, one that even in darkness light can always be found and shared. Under the stars, surrounded by the stories it had helped write, the estate continued to shine. Every stone, every tree, every horse carried the memory of a family that had chosen truth, love, and redemption. And around the world, millions of souls found inspiration to write their own stories of transformation, guided by the eternal legacy of the Winters Ashford family. The years that followed reinforced the impact of the Ashford estate. New initiatives were launched, touching unexplored areas such as innovative therapies for people with neurological disorders and survivors of climate disasters. The research center, led by Nicholas, published several groundbreaking studies, showing the impact of human-animal interaction on brain neuroplasticity. These discoveries attracted the attention of researchers and universities worldwide. Claire, now recognized as a key figure in human rights, launched a global campaign to support children displaced by conflicts. Inspired by her family's story, she used her voice to demand concrete actions from governments. "Every child deserves a sanctuary, a place where they can heal and dream," she declared at a United Nations conference. Her campaign, supported by the Winters Ashford Foundation, was adopted in more than 20 countries. The younger generations of the Winters Ashford family, motivated by this powerful legacy, contributed to expanding the foundation's reach. A new program titled Gardens of Resilience was designed to offer natural healing spaces in urban areas. Victoria and Emily, still active despite their advanced age, were invited to a special ceremony at the estate. The regional mayor declared that day that Ashford was a living heritage of humanity. "This estate is proof that a story of pain can become an infinite source of light," he declared. The two sisters, moved by this tribute, humbly thanked him, recalling that it all began with an act of courage. The chapel, now at the center of the estate's spiritual activities, hosted an annual ceremony in memory of Isabella Winters and other family members who had sacrificed their safety to protect the truth. A new tradition was introduced, planting a tree for each person who found healing at the estate. Within a few years, a magnificent forest came to life, called the Forest of Healed Stories. This forest became a universal symbol. Visitors from around the world came to meditate, plant their own trees, or simply find inspiration. As the children and grandchildren of Victoria and Emily took over, they introduced modern technologies to amplify the foundation's impact while staying true to its principles. One day, during a family meeting, Nicholas proposed an ambitious idea: creating a digital platform to share the foundation's expertise with the world. The platform, named the Echo of Ashford, offered accessible resources to everyone, wherever they were. "We don't just touch lives here," explained Nicholas. "We have the potential to transform entire communities worldwide." Claire, on her side, established a partnership with artists and writers to capture the resilient stories inspired by Ashford. These stories were published in an anthology titled The Lights of Resilience. At its launch, Beatrice, attending virtually due to her advanced age, declared with pride, "Every word of these stories is a victory against darkness." Victoria, in her final days, watched with satisfaction as the next generations carried the family legacy. "You have all surpassed our wildest dreams," she said during a family dinner. "Ashford is in good hands." After her peaceful passing, a memorial was added in the forest with an inscription, "Victoria Winters Ashford, a life dedicated to love and truth." Emily, now the family matriarch, continued to oversee major decisions while telling the younger generations the stories of courage and resilience of their ancestors. "It's a living legacy," she often said. "We are the guardians of a treasure we must protect and share." The decades passed, and the Ashford estate became more than a place, a global movement embodying the possibility of transforming pain into strength, loss into hope, and secrets into truth. Under a sky filled with stars, the estate's lights continued to shine, reminding everyone that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way to the light. And so the Winters Ashford story continued, carried by the hearts they had touched, the lives they had changed, and the hopes they had rekindled across generations. The years that followed saw the Ashford estate not only thrive but become a timeless sanctuary for those seeking refuge and hope. The Winters Ashford Foundation expanded far beyond French borders, establishing centers on every continent. Nicholas, now president of the World Council for Equine Therapy, continued to develop groundbreaking initiatives, including programs for marginalized populations and areas affected by natural disasters. Claire, strengthened by her experience in international law, created a global fund to support child survivors of conflict. This fund became a pillar of child protection, inspired by her own family's story. Victoria and Emily, although taking a more advisory role, continued to guide the foundation with wisdom. Their unbreakable bond remained the organization's pillar. The Ashford estate became a protected historical site, symbolizing not only the family's legacy, but also the history of a global movement. Each year, Young people from diverse backgrounds stayed there, participating in leadership, resilience, and healing programs. Many of them drew inspiration from the Winters Ashford story to transform their own lives. During a celebration marking the Foundation's 150th anniversary, a monumental mural was unveiled in the estate's Great Hall. It depicted the key figures of the family history, surrounded by the horses that had played a central role in their journey. "These faces," declared Nicholas during the inauguration, "remind us that true strength lies in love, truth, and the ability to rise again." The estate also hosted an interactive museum dedicated to the Winters Ashford history. This museum, designed to inspire visitors, traced their journey from the dark days of secrets to their transformation into a global symbol of hope. In the estate's gardens, a special section was created to honor the horses that had contributed to this transformation. Each horse received a commemorative plaque, highlighting their role in the healing stories. A new generation took up the mantle, proudly carrying the Winters Ashford legacy. The children and grandchildren of Victoria and Emily, raised in the spirit of compassion and truth, prepared to write their own chapter. During a family dinner, Claire addressed the gathered family members. "We have inherited a unique treasure, the ability to transform sorrow into hope. We must continue to honor this legacy." Victoria, moved by these words, added, "This estate has taught us that nothing is ever lost. Every scar, every mistake can become a source of strength." The Ashford estate, now a universal symbol of resilience, continued to touch millions of lives around the world. One day, a former patient, now a writer, published a book titled The Lights of Ashford. This book, dedicated to the Winters Ashford family, recounted his own journey of healing thanks to the estate. "This place," he wrote, "is not just a physical space, it's a home for the soul. A reminder that even the most broken hearts can be mended." The family, touched by these words, continued to receive testimonials from around the world, confirming that their mission far exceeded their initial dreams. Victoria, in her final years, dedicated her time to writing memoirs, hoping to capture the essence of what Ashford represented. Emily, ever devoted, ensured that the principles of truth and integrity remained at the heart of the Foundation's decisions. "We are merely guardians of this legacy," she often declared. "It is up to those who come after us to carry it even further." And so the Ashford estate endured, not only as a place but as a movement, an idea, a promise, one that even in darkness light can always be found and shared. Under the stars, surrounded by the stories it had helped write, the estate continued to shine. Every stone, every tree, every horse carried the memory of a family that had chosen truth, love, and redemption. And around the world, millions of souls found inspiration to write their own stories of transformation, guided by the eternal legacy of the Winters Ashford family. The years that followed reinforced the impact of the Ashford estate. New initiatives were launched, touching unexplored areas such as innovative therapies for people with neurological disorders and survivors of climate disasters. The research center, led by Nicholas, published several groundbreaking studies showing the impact of human-animal interaction on brain neuroplasticity. These discoveries attracted the attention of researchers and universities worldwide.